Let me ask you a question. Can you believe this is real? No, seriously. The free 5-star standard banner selector has been theorized and leaked 100 times over within the 4 years that Genshin Impact has existed. Every time before that, absolute BS. This time, for real. Well, with the help of my YouTube chat, we're going to work together and decide what the best 5-star for you is going to be. Let's get to it. So let's start with Jean. Let's start with Jeanathan. So let's talk about her baseline, because there's 2 conversations to have, right? Because first is, do you have the character for newer players and for players who just haven't gotten lucky or unlucky enough to get a character? What does the character even do? Are they good? Well, Jean's got a couple of things that she does. Her normal attacks are fine. Nothing fancy, except for her charge attack is, like, very unique. Where, like, it knocks enemies into the air and, like, holds them there, which is actually really cool. She's, like, she's, like, the only character that does that. We have Gale Blade, which is a minor crowd control effect. It, like, pulls enemies in a little bit and, like, stuns them and then you can just throw them. Its unique thing going for it, other than, like, just being, like, normal, good anemo damage, you can do fall damage. You can throw someone straight up in the air for fall damage, which is kind of cool. There's 3 things I want to talk about for each character. I want to talk about their skills, like their basic kit for like a new player. I want to talk about their constellations for a player who might have already have them or been playing for a long time. And then I want to talk about like the teams and things you can do with them. Dandelion Priest, gigantic heal. Does good damage. Like straight up, does like solid, very good damage. Healing over time, burst heal for your party. 80 energy cost is kind of high, but like I find getting her energy up is pretty easy. Like, her skill actually just generates a good chunk of energy, and then, like, you just stack ER on her, and it's good. So she's a very good healer. Now, the cool thing that she has going for her is that she can be an on-field healer, too. Because every other attack, effectively, so 50% chance on every normal attack, that you will do a heal to the whole party based on Jean's attack. And this is just a passive. You just have this all the time. And it's actually really good. Like, 15% of your attack stat isn't, like, gargantuan, but when you are stacking primarily attack on her, that can get pretty hardy. So yeah, she's just an all-rounder, very good character. So, like, for a newbie, going for, like, just, like, a character, like, a first character, she's a really good start. Because she does a lot of things, and we'll talk about the builds and, like, what you can do with her afterwards, but, like, this is, like, she's super strong. For those who are maybe a long-time player, or God forbid, a returning player, and you already have a constellation or 2, or you already have her in general. We have some constellations. So her C1 makes it so you have a better pull on her skill, as well as increasing its damage, which just makes the skill even more powerful, and the skill is already good, so this is just nice. This is the one that definitely changes her playstyle a little bit, because it says whenever Jean picks up an elemental particle, your whole party gets a movement and attack speed. So you want to make sure that you keep her on field long enough after using your skill to get the buff active. And 15% attack speed is pretty good. The movement speed is it's relevant in some cases, but the attack speed though, that's really nice. There's not a lot of options for attack speed in the game, especially one that's this easy to do. Like, effectively, this attack speed buff is on her skill. Could you discuss the old physical build? I will! Oh, believe me, I will. I just want to go through, like, what the abilities are first, and then we'll get right into that. Don't worry, Sean. We'll get there. C4. She's also one of the only characters in the game that lets you do Anemo Shred. Anemo, because of Viridescent Veneer, can shred just about every element in the game, barring 3. It can't shred Geo, it can't shred Dendro, and it can't shred itself. She has the ability to shred Anima, which is very interesting, making her very viable as an Animo support. Like a support for Anima units. And then finally the C6, which is a 35% damage decrease while inside the burst. And for a little bit of time afterwards. So 35% damage reduction, while in a very powerful healing circle, is very good. It's a lot of damage reduction. What is Jean good at? Well, if you look at her kit and what she's got cooking, she's got 2 effective roles. She's either an Animo healer, you throw her on Viridescent, and you just stack attack and ER, and you just let her burst and her normal attacks and her skill do their thing. You do Animo Shred, you do the Shred with Viridescent, you heal with all that tons of attack you have, and you just run Rough Shot. Like, and then when you need extra healing, you throw her on the field and you just start swinging. She can also do physical. Because when she first came out, like, or when the game came out, because she came out with the game, she was a launch character, she was used in physical team comps. And she's actually still quite good at that. And she pairs really well with a lot of characters who, like, are meta. Like, she pairs very well with Fiorina, as the chat's been saying. She's very good with Fiorina. So many characters. Like, you can put her with almost anyone, and it's fine. If you just need to fill the healing slot, Jean's often just the answer. You can just put her there, and it works. And this doesn't really help that much. But yeah, like, you pair her with, like, Fiorina, and you do some Dendro stuff, and use her as a driver. She's really good. Sander, in the chat, recommended just doing, like, double Hydro with her and Raiden as well as, like, supports, and it's really good. You can throw her in pretty much any element-based team, like any Pyro team, any Hydro team, Cryo team. Like, she can work in Freeze teams because she just swirls. But yeah, she just gets the job done. She's really good. Like I said, you throw, like, Viridescent on her, you can throw a healing set on her, you can throw, like, Pale Flame on her even, and it's fine. And just have her drive and do physical damage around, like, a reaction or something. But yeah, your only 2 stats that really matter, for healing at least, is, like, attack and energy recharge. And if you're doing physical, well, it's just attack and crit stats. She's really easy to build because of that. Because your substats almost don't even matter to a point. She works with the meta very well. You throw, like, she works with Shoguns, she works with the Raiden, or she works with the Shoguns, she works with the Fiorinas of the world. You can throw her with Nervalette, and she works. I mean, everyone works with Nervalette, but that's not the point. Throw her with Arlecchino. Not as good, but Arlecchino likes the attack speed buff if you have her C2. Throw her with, who's another really good meta character? Nahida. Like, all the Nahida reactions, like, she works fine with. Because Swirl doesn't really interfere with what Dendro wants to do. It actually benefits in a lot of cases. So, yeah. No, she's good. She's really good. She's a good pick for a lot of, I think, for not necessarily new players. Chlorant, there you go. She's not the best pick for, like, if you're a brand new out-of-the-gate player, she's probably not going to be your first pick. But she's worth consideration. She's very good. She's the kind of character, she is what I would describe as, like, the best second 5-star, you know? So you have your first 5-star character that you already gotten, whether that's a standard one, or you already have your Chlorand, or you got, like, the new hotness, or whatever new hotness just came out. She is such a good second character. If you already have a good 5-star that you're building around, she's like the perfect second pick, you know? That's what I would describe. So if you're a new player and you already have, like, a 5-star that you like, think about Jean. Jean can help support anyone, pretty much. For, like, old-time players, depending on what constellation you're going for, C2 is a really big breakpoint for her. So if you have C1, going for C2 is very good. If you have C3, C4, very good if you like the Animo stuff. Like, if you like Wanderer, if you like Farazan shenanigans, if you like just Animo DPS characters. I mean, put her with like, even just a Hazo, it's really good. And then finally, the C6 is good, but if you're at this point, it might be a little overkill. It's not as good and like as important as the other ones, but a 35% damage reduction, if you're, like, in the end game, you have good builds, good characters, but you struggle a little bit with staying alive, and you're like the enemies are harshing on your mellow, this is a good pickup sometimes. Like it can make the game a lot more comfy. And with World Level 9 right around the corner, this might be a good time for this. It's a good time to think about it. Now, let's talk about... Here's the character that if you're a new player and you don't have any 5-star, this is your guy. Spoilers, this is your guy. You're new to this game, and you're still learning, and you don't have a 5-star character, or, God forbid, you have a 5-star character and you just don't like them. Like, they're not what you're interested in, this is your guy. Alright, he is, de facto, the easiest character in the game to play. And I mean that by no hyperbole. And I'll show you why. So Diluc is a Claymore character. He swings his Claymore, and he does normal damage. But that's not really his thing. Like, he's not a physical character. Until you throw his burst into the conversation, but we'll get there. His skill, you can activate it 3 times. It does pyro damage. Look how much text there is here. Look how much text there is. It's 3 lines. 3 short sentences. Might as well just say, attack, do pyro. Use 3 times. Use quick, or go away. Like, it's so right to the point. It's so easy. I love this. I love this. You push the button 3 times, do damage. His burst. Very short paragraph. Just a short paragraph, kind of like... And most of it isn't even explaining what it does. I would say the majority of this is almost flavor text. You could summarize this in 2 sentences. Summon a flaming bird. It does pyro damage in a direction, knocking enemies back. Imbue, and it gives you a pyro infusion. Infuse your weapon with pyro. So now his normal attacks do pyro damage. First passive. Charge attack, stamina cost decreased by 50%, duration increased by 3 seconds. This doesn't matter. You never use this. Pyro infusion provided by Dawn lasts 4 seconds longer, plus pyro damage bonus. So, here's just how this works. You just use your burst, use your skill, and you swing your sword. That's it. That's it. That's all he is. This is why he is like the beginnerist, one of the best beginner characters in the game. He's so straightforward. He does, everything he does is exactly what you think he should do. But yeah, he is very strong. When the game first came out, he was the premier meta character. He has since fallen off a fair bit. But most people, most like longtime players will even say, even now, that like you can throw him into the endgame content if you've invested in him, and he'll keep up with the meta. Like, he does a good job. And he has some other niche uses, too. If you don't like doing his standard vape build, which is just basically you put him with Shincho, and an Anemo character of your choice, and maybe a healer if you're feeling spicy, most recommend Bennett, and you just hit things. You just hit things, and it works. You can do Burgeon stuff with him. He's recently had a resurgence, actually. If you are a big fan of Cloud Retainer, and you like the plunge stuff, he does a really mean plunge attack build. And Bricken just, like, followed up on that. Yeah, it's, he was given a new home with that plunge build. That plunge build is legit. It is very good. And is a very viable home for him, if you have Shanyon. Without Shanyon, his normal just hit stuff with his sword is really good. And I know a lot of people don't like Claymores. I find that a lot of newer players don't like Claymores. Now, maybe I'm going crazy, but I found that a lot of new players don't like Claymores. From my very brief interactions with newer players. Because they're slow, right? Diluc's Claymore does not feel like a Claymore. Diluc's Claymore is very fast, because you can interweave it with your skill. So if you want to get, like, advanced here, getting into the fancy shit, you swing with a normal attack, you do a skill. You swing with the normal attack, you do a skill. You swing with the normal attack, you do a skill. And then you throw the big bird at him. And then that's it. If you get Diluc's skin, you get 50% more damage because of the Immaculate Drip. I mean, I'd almost believe that. He's so good to learn the game with, because he basically works with all the popular interactions. And he works with a lot of the popular characters, reactions. Like, he has so many options. And they're all straightforward. They're all really easy to grasp. If you like Burgeon, Well, you throw some water on them, you throw some Dendra on them, and you swing a sword. You like vape? You throw some water on them and you swing your sword. He's so straightforward. So easy to grasp. But still maintains being pretty fun to play, honestly. Like, it's fun to just hit things, you know? It feels good to hit things. And if you're a long-time player, are his constellations good? Well, yeah, actually, they're great. And they all mostly maintain that, like, generally straightforward, like, easy to read, easy to understand, with, like, the exception of one. There's, like, one that I think is challenged. C1, very straightforward. D-Luke deals 50% more damage to enemies above 50% health. So, high health enemies take more damage. Super basic, very straightforward. 15% damage. No one's complaining about that. This one's interesting. When D-Luke takes damage, his attack is increased by 10%, and his attack speed is increased by 5%, and it can stack. So if you're taking damage, whether it's from burning, and this actually gives a very interesting credence, like an interesting opportunity here. If you're in a burning team and you accidentally set yourself on fire, well, all of a sudden, he's getting bonus damage. It's kind of interesting. It's not like the most, like, it's not the first thing you think about doing, but it's just free damage, which is kind of cute. It's not the most exciting one. So, like, if you have his C1, his C2 isn't that exciting. If I'm being honest. It's cool, but it's whatever. Now, if you have his C3, though, and you're going for his C4, now, the conversation's different. So, if you can maintain a rhythm when you're doing his skills, so basically you wait 2 seconds after each one, the next one in the combo will deal 40% more damage. It's noticeable. If you can get good at doing this, it is a big damage boost. You feel this difference. And it kind of turns him into, like, this, like, really nice rhythm. And I think it usually boils down to skill, normal, normal, skill, normal, normal, skill, normal, normal. And that usually works fine. Would Yunjin speed buff stack? Absolutely it would. Absolutely does. Pretty much all sources of attack speed stack, but there's a cap. And his 5% maxing out at 15% is not going to hit that. So absolutely 100% stacks. If you're going for his C6, though, his C6 is interesting. So after you use Searing Onslaught, his normal attack speed has their damage and speed increased by 30%. Also, your skill does not interrupt your normal attack combo. This is really, really good. Like, this makes him just like, oh, you just start like flailing like a madman. So, yes, his C6 is really cool. This is like, for me, I've been on the fence about this because I have him C5. And part of me really, really wants this. But there's someone else who has a closer place in my heart. If you are a longtime player and you can get this C6, it is really strong, it's really cool. And big damage, big attack speed, and it synergizes with this. It makes doing this easier, because now your attacks will line up better. And I think pretty much any player, new or old, can find uses for them. So next up is the infamous one. We have to talk about it. Is there ever a universe where anyone would ever take Chi-Chi? And you know what? I'm going to argue yes. I'm going to argue for Chi-Chi here. So let's talk about her. So she is a very tiny character who swings a very tiny sword. Chi-Chi, unironically, and I mean this with no hyperbole, no exaggeration, one of the best healers in the game. Her healing output is insane. Like, I don't think Kokomi keeps up with this thing. Kokomi can do theoretically more damage, and is more synergistic. But this thing cannot be stopped. It will heal you. And that's it. So the normal attacks aren't really that exciting. Her scaling, her ratios, they're not super good, but there is an argument to be made for doing physical builds with her, because you could just make her do damage, because like Jean, her healing scales with attack, so you're getting benefits from building her offensively anyway, so a little bit of physical bonus in your build for a little bit of extra damage isn't gonna go to waste. So you always keep that in mind. But then we got her skill. Her skill's a very long cooldown. Lasts for 15 seconds, a cooldown of 30. Can be kind of rough. But the amount of healing you get from this it's stupendous. Because it does a passive heal, and if she's on field, which when you're healing with her, you often want her to be, it's just every swing is healing. For a huge amount. Chi-Chi Taser is hilarious. We will go into the team details, because she is actually wildly synergistic. More synergistic than people give her credit for. Her burst, very similar. The way it works is it does a big burst of damage, has a 20-second cooldown, big energy cost, which we'll talk about this as well. But it marks enemies hit with this, what is it actually called? Fortune-preserving talisman. And it just, anytime anyone hits the marked enemies, they heal for a stupendous amount of healing. It is a gargantuan amount. So, yeah, her healing is stupendous. And then, of course, we got her passives here, which is just healing bonus. Whenever you do an elemental reaction, which is fine. It's whatever. Her healing is already stupendous, this just makes it more stupendous. This is bread and butter, though. Whenever you normal or charge attack an enemy, you have a chance to apply a short-lived fortune-preserving talisman. Figure the main one lasts for 15 seconds. These one lasts for 6. With, again, big cooldown. But, the thing with Chi-Chi to optimize her is that she is somewhat skill testing. You really need to balance what heals you have up, because you have to be accounting for these long cooldowns. And in the case of her burst, she doesn't generate energy very well, so you really need to run her with a battery in a lot of cases to shore up this difference, or put a lot of ER on her, one or the other, if not both. Like I said before, I like to run her in kind of physical comp sometimes, so she'll often be paired with a Shogun, which does help quite a bit. And if you're going really ham with it, you throw a Favlance character, something like a Mika or something, and go ham. And it's pretty good. For teams and stuff you can do with her, she is what I describe as a phenomenal reaction driver. Because she's so good healing on field, she can basically stay on field forever with no fear, as long as her skill or burst is up. And there's a... God, she's versatile. You literally can just put her in any team as a driver that doesn't need an element to drive it. For example, a lot of Bloom teams don't need an elemental driver a lot of the time, because you can do it with, Nahida, a bunch of off-field characters doing the reactions for you, and then she just drives. She's just on the field hitting things. You know, you throw on, a Shincho, a Nahida, and, a Cookie with her. Also, a very niche team that's actually pretty meta that she's very good in. She works very well in Fridge teams, and for the uninitiated, a Fridge team is a freeze team that does Hyper Bloom. So she is one of, I would argue, one of the best Fridge team drivers, because she can freeze, she has okay cryo application, the skill is decent, and because she's constantly healing, you are not in any danger, ever. And specifically if there's Rift Hounds or any of the really damaging and really punishing enemy types, she's really nice to have. As a side note though, she also synergizes very well with Furina in the same way that Jean does, because Furina's cooking you, she will effectively uncook you. It's quite good. As for her constellations, I would argue, aren't as interesting as a lot of the other ones. So, if you have her C0, you got pretty much everything you need. With, a couple of odds and ends here if you want to do some meme stuff. For example, her C1 helps her get her own energy, which is massive. This is really, really important if you want to seriously run her, because this energy is huge. Otherwise, you have to play around it. Which is totally doable. You can totally play around it without much issue. But, this frees up some problems. This gives her normal and charge attack bonus damage, which is nice. If you want to do that physical bonus damage kind of build that I was talking about earlier, this is kind of bread and butter for you. As long as they have cryo on them, you're doing bonus damage, which is really nice. This is a damage reduction. This is something I find kind of common with, the old healers, was that they give damage reduction. I guess, like with Jean and Chi-Chi both having this somewhere in their constellations. Yeah, reducing enemy attack is pretty nice. It's not like, again, it's not huge. This is not like gonna like make or break anything, but like it's cool. This is an often slept on constellation. I like giving Chi-Chi an infusion with Chongyun and she can be a full cryo DPS. I know, it's pretty cool. I actually did a whole video on that, funny enough. I did a whole video on all these weird Chi-Chi teams, including Physical, Pyro, I did Cryo. Like, they're cool. I think that she's really flexible, potentially. These kind of talents, Barbara has this too. Barbara has a very similar talent constellation to this. This is slept on. This gives you an oh shit button. And if you're doing the Abyss or content where you can't use items, having an ability to resurrect your whole party is really, really good, you know? Like, you're like, oh shit, I screwed up, I have to restart. Oh, no, I don't have to restart. Like, that's kind of nice, right? Yeah, sure, it's not gonna, like, break the game or, like, you know, make it, like, it's not overpowered or, like, even all that great most of the time, but the times it's good, it's really good. Like, this could save a run. Don't sleep on this. Like, if you are filling out constellations and you're really late game and you don't know what you're looking for, this is something to consider. If you don't have Chi-Chi at all, honestly, if you like doing, like, Bloom stuff with Furina, or, like, or Fridge teams, she's a great consideration. Again, similar to Jean, she's a good second character, not a good first character. She's not the character you want to start your game with, she's a character you want to, like, lean into later. She's good, though. I generally recommend her for, like, some mid-game players. I think mid-game is a good time for her. If you're going for her, you're probably, like, you're not end-game, you're not early game, you're in the mid-game. So Monene used to be very meta. She's since fallen off because there's just been better options to do her job. But she is still the best at one thing in particular. She is the best at doing one-shots. You want to one-shot something? She's your girl. Yeah, she is the damage per screenshot meta. Like, if you want to one-tap something, she's your girl. And it's because of her burst. And unlike the other characters, I'm going to talk about her burst first, because her burst is her kit. Like, everything in her kit is her burst. Like, this is it. It does a 8-second stun to smaller enemies, which is pretty good, actually. Honestly, kind of slept on. But as soon as they're damaged, the bubble pops, so then, like, they're free to move around. So, but it's like, it can save you a fair bit of damage in, like, swarmier groups. It's not bad. It then blows up when you hit them for massive damage. It also applies a debuff called Omen. Omen only lasts for 4 seconds. This is the downside with it. It only lasts 4 seconds, but is a gargantuan buff. Holy shit, Omen increases your damage by a lot. This is why she is the one-shot queen. You pair her with, like, a good damage dealer who can do a good big hit. You kill the thing in one hit. It dies. You say, you are going to die, and then they die. And that's just the end of it. End of conversation. She's still good, though. Even beyond that, because if you're not trying for one-shots and you just need to, like, okay, stun my enemies and then just do, like, a D-Luke burst, for example, you're gonna wipe them out 9 times out of 10. Which feels pretty good. If you're a late-game player, Mona's probably not going to be your grab. With few exceptions. We'll talk about them as we go. But, like, she still has homes. There's still places you can put her where she does do pretty well for herself. Like, you can throw her in Bloom teams. You can throw her in Freeze teams, and she's still pretty good. You can throw her in just as, like, a general filler character, because her buff is neutral, right? You can buff anything with it, which is pretty good. Her skill is pretty straightforward. It does a little bit of pulsing damage, while then blowing up for a good chunk of damage, but it's also a taunt. It is a taunt that has a duration that is not listed anywhere. I think it's 4 seconds. I think it's 4 seconds, could be 6, but I'm pretty sure it's 4. And it's a good skill. It applies Hydro decently well, and taunts are okay. Taunts is not the best mechanic in the game because they're not They're not, like, guaranteed to work the way you want, but, like, it's okay. Like I said, there's better options. If she's, like, if you're getting early game, she's really, really nice, because the taunt is good. If you're early game, actually, if you're a new player, she can actually make an argument for being your first. She's not like Diluc, where he's, like, the best first character, in my opinion. She's a good second pick, though. Like, hell, if you already have Diluc, she's a great second pick. And it's actually because of this ability. Her alternate dash, her sprint lets her run on water. It's faster than a normal dash. It can walk on water. And it itself applies Hydro, which is cool. Yeah. Now, here's the cool thing about Mona, and this is something that I think makes her interesting and pretty viable still. Her Hydro damage is increased by 20% of her ER. She's an ER character. She gets a nice ER bonus. Or a damage bonus from her ER, which synergizes so well with what you want to do. You want her burst up all the time. So stacking ER is totally in your favor. It also means you probably don't need a Hydro Goblet. Which means you can do the Raiden Shogun thing. Where you do Energy Recharge, Hourglass, Attack Goblet, which is cool. But overall, like, as like an early game character, she's good, and as a late game character, she's fine. She falls off a little bit, but she does have constellations that are worth talking about. So her C1 is probably one of the coolest C1s, like, in the game. And I mean this, like, unironically. I love her C1. So if you have Mona, but you don't have her C1, and you're interested in Mona, get her C1. Because it buffs reactions. Like, it increases Electro Charge damage, increases Vape damage, increases Hydro Swirl damage. And as I understand, the last one there, Freeze Duration, doesn't work. Freeze Duration is still bugged. Yep. So all of these other three things work, as I understand, but the Freeze Duration doesn't. And I don't know why it's still there. Like, there's two ways they can fix it. Number one, they fix the freeze duration and they make it so it actually works. Or number two, just remove the line of text. Because it's not there. It's not real. Just remove the line of text and give some compensation primos. Like, seriously, like, just rip the band-aid off at this point. Like, goddamn. Her C2 is interesting because it kind of gives her a reason to go on field. Because, like I said, her charge attack is, like, decent. And this gives her a free charge attack for normal attacking every, like, effectively every 5 hits. It's a 20% chance every 5 seconds, and that's kind of cool. I've never played around with this, but I do have this constellation, and I've really thought about, like, messing with it. It's kind of neat. This is nice, actually. This is just nice. Whenever you hit an opponent that's marked with Omen, you get a 15% crit rate buff, which is just nice. Again, just nice. Free crit rate is nice. Makes building characters easier. Entering Illusionary Torrent, Mona gains 60% increased damage of her next charge attack. So this changes her playstyle. This can turn her into a somewhat legit charge attack character, and maybe even allow her to do her own one-shots, which is kind of cute. But it's not great, per se. It doesn't really play into like what she's normally used for, but it's cute. So, realistically, the only, like, if you have Mona already as an older player, or even like a new-ish player, mid-game player, the only constellation here that I really care about is the C1. The C1 is cash money. The other ones are cute, but like they lean into a different playstyle. So I think that's all there is to say about Mona. We talked about the teams, and like she's versatile. I gotta give Mona, she's super versatile. I would describe her as queen of the mid-game. And like, as you transition, because I think the thing that happens when you're transitioning into the late game, the first thing you start doing is one-shots. That's the first thing you want to do, right? Like every player, when they're starting to get into the end game, they want to start doing one-shots, right? They want to see some damage per screenshot, and Mona's really good for that. So, yeah. I am prepared to get yelled at. I'm ready to be pitchforked into oblivion by the Kaching mains. But, oh boy. Is Kaching good to start with if you're a new player? Kind of. She's a bit rough, I'm not gonna lie. In the early game, she's rough. She can be very good. But, like, to get her picked up, you have to do a lot of specific things. Now, granted, is it worth it? Absolutely. 100% worth it, but you gotta do a lot of steps. You gotta get your Dendro MC early. Because you have to go out of your way, you gotta make sure to go to Sumeru without any knowledge of doing so. Someone has to tell you, go to Sumeru, get Dendro Traveler. For some history, Keqing on release was considered one of the best and the worst character at the same time. She had the strangest reputation of all time. She was often used as an electro DPS, a taser enabler, and a physical carry. Keqing has had a weird history. But she fell off a cliff. At least you can get Dendro MC without quests. Yeah. The only downside, and this is specifically for new players, this is very specifically for new players, is that, well, if you're just starting the game out, unless someone tells you, you have no idea where Dendro Traveler is, right? That's the main problem with Genshin. You have to play her with Dendro, and it's problematic for new players. Yeah. If you want to keep up with, like, the competitive way the game is played, like, in the early game, it's fine. Honestly, when you're first starting out, you can just hit stuff, and it's not going to be a problem. But she quickly falls off because of that. Unless you grab that Dendro character. And Dendro MC is the easiest one. He is one of the best ones, too. Like, he is very, very good. But if you don't know, you don't know. You have to have someone tell you. And let me play devil's advocate here real quick with the chat. If you are a new player in a video game, do you want someone telling you what to do immediately? So you just started playing Genshin Impact, someone says, oh, you got Keqing, oh, you have to go over there and get Dendro Guy. I think most watch guides. I don't think that's true. I think the majority of players don't even know what a guide is. I think the people who watch guides is the minority of players. I think you have to be really in tune with the game. There's a lot of people who don't know what a guide is. Screw that, let me have fun. Exactly. She's not bad for exploration. Great for exploration, even. I would argue she's really good for exploration. She was like the first exploration character, for criminy's sake. She was the original exploration character. That's true. Most people do not watch guides. The people who watch guides are people who already know the game. Exactly. There's people who are already like in tune with it. They're like very ear to the ground. They follow the special programs. They're following like multiple content creators potentially. They're reading stuff online. God forbid they're looking at leaks. But yeah. Exactly, Bricken. That's what she suffers from. She suffers from spreadsheet. My main team, I'm going to assume, with her was not Dendro. I off-meta with Rosario, Water Sword Guy, and Meta. And that's what I'm saying. The early game, you can get away with pretty much anything. So in that regard, she's fine. But if you want to be it's hard, right? Because she does hit that fall-off point. Especially with how rough mid and end game has sort of become. Like, if you want to get into the Abyss, if you want to get into, like, the new end game thing, the theater, working with her can be kind of rough. But let's talk about what she actually does. Like, we've talked about, like, the reasons why you may not want her, but there's lots of reasons to want her. She's good. She's a strong character. It's just you have to have that moment of someone telling you what to do, and that's not good for everyone. Am I a rare gamer that starts watching guides from day one? I don't know if I'd say rare, but yeah, effectively. Like, if someone comes to me day one and starts telling me how to play, I'm gonna kick him in the nards. Like, square in the dick. I'm not even gonna, I have no patience for it. Right, Bricken? Square in the dick. For the longest time, before I got into the actual mechanics of the game, I ran her with Zhongling, Goro, and Ito. Wow, that is one of the teams of all time. I love it. If I get into a new game, I try to find guards. Yeah, it varies from person to person, but I would think the norm, the standard for most people. If you think of, the general population of a video game, especially a game like this, that can be very casual, most people aren't looking up guides. They don't want that. They don't want that. They just want to be able to sit down and play the game. They want to take out their credit card, buy their favorite character, and move on with their life. But that's just, like, the majority, right? She is, like, a normal attack-S character. Her ratios for normal attacks are fine. Her charge attack's actually really good. So you actually rely on her charged attacks quite a bit, in a lot of cases. And she is pretty strong, overall. But you really do need that Dendro to make it work, and that's because of her skill. Her skill has two modes. It either has... You can either throw it out the skill and then do a charge attack to do a big burst of damage. That's for the physical build, if you want to go physical with her, which a lot of people used to back in the day. You still can, but obviously the Electro builds are better. Especially now. If you tap the skill a second time, you basically throw the skill out and then you teleport to it. That's the thing that makes her good for exploration, and it also gives her an infusion, which is super good. Electro infusion is good. Combine it with Dendro, combine it with Hydro, you have yourself a whole team. And, like, yeah, this is another thing I will actually comment on. If you look at her kit compared to, like, say, Diluc, there's a lot more going on here. There's a lot more moving parts. Like, look at how long this skill is. This is the longest skill we've seen so far. There is a lot of things happening here. Even though, like, overall it's not that complicated, it looks intimidating. If you're new. The burst is at least straightforward. Push button, do damage. It's just a big burst of electro damage. Hits a bunch of times. It's good. Good electro damage. Nothing to complain about. This is the thing that gives her the infusion. It's just a passive. It literally says, after you use your skill a second time, get infusion. Yeah, the infusion's not even baked into the skill. It's actually baked into one of her passives. And this is actually a really, really nice one. After using her burst, you get some energy back. You get some... Or your energy recharge is increased, rather, I should say. And you get a crit rate buff, which is good. You literally do your burst, you do the skill, you start smacking things. Feels good. Feels good, man. How's Diluc text look if we come out... If we came out 5.0? Look at, like, Hu Tao. Or, like, Arlecchino. My issue is that the majority of the characters, artifacts, weapons, like... I don't have the concentration for that. Yeah, thankfully, most of the characters, like the older characters, are very straightforward. You can kind of look at their kit and be like, okay, I think I know what you want to do. Like, oh, you scale with health. Let's give you the health stuff. Oh, you do damage off-field. Let's do the damage off-field stuff. Oh, you hurt yourself. Let's do the hurt yourself stuff. You know what I mean? But yeah, so as a first character, she can be a little weird to work with, but like, I can recommend her. If you're watching this video right now, and you like Keqing's design, I can recommend her, but you have to do one thing first. Figure out where Sumeru is. Go to a statue and get Dendro Traveler. Trust me, you'll thank me later. Let's talk about the constellations. After recasting her skill, you get an extra burst of electro damage. It's fine. I don't think she has anyone in particular that's super exciting. When Keqing's normal and charge attack hits electro-applied enemies, you have a 50% chance of doing particles, which is just, again, nice. It helps with her burst. Helps your party out, too, which is good. Honestly, the absolute 15-page thesis on most character skills these days is just abhorrent. That is a big word, but yes. Okay. C4. After 10 seconds. 10 seconds after... Or rather, 10-second buff. After triggering an electro-related reaction, increase your attack by 25%. That's just good! And then this one, normal attacks. When initiating a normal attack, a charge attack, an elemental skill, a burst, Keqing gains 6% elemental electro damage bonus for 8 seconds. The triggered by normal attack, charge attack, elemental skills, bursts are considered independent entities. I have heard that this constellation, from the Keqing mains that I have communicated with over the years, is not very good. It is fine. It is not a big damage increase. It's not as big as you think it should be. But it is fine. So, like, I don't think there's any constellation in Keqing's kit, if you are a Keqing player, or you own her already, that you really are like, I need this right now. You don't really need any of them. She just kind of works, and they're all, like, small little boosts here and there. Honestly, like, this is probably, like, her C3, the one that buffs her burst, is probably the best one. Which is wild. Maybe that's a hot take, but, like, you don't need any of them. They're all fine. I've heard, like, it's a 20%. I've heard it's less. I've heard it's even less than that. Like, it's not even that big. Like, it rounds up to be, like, a 10 or a 15, almost. Now, again, it could be misinformation, because there's all kinds of information floating around out there, but... even then, 20% damage boost, it's good. It's just not exciting, right? Like, it's not like, whoa, god, game-changing. It's like, yeah, it's pretty good. That's fine. It's just her damage buff goes up. It's not like... it's fine. But yeah, if you don't own her, and you have access to Dendro, if you're like a mid-game player, similar to the Mona conversation, she's a really good grab. C6 complete is 20%. Oh! Oh, like all of them together is 20%. Okay, that makes sense, actually. Yeah, I think that's it. That sounds right. Is it 30? Man, 30% damage boost for a C6, man, that's rough. That's kind of rough, actually, isn't it? That's pretty bad. Like, they're fine, but, like, again, no one of them is, like, good enough on their own to make you go, I need this. So, other than that, like, yeah, she's fine on her own. You have a Dendro character with her, then she starts really popping off, and she's solid. Great with Dendro. Probably, actually, you know what? I didn't talk about this, actually. She's probably pretty good in Overload, though. If you have Chevreuse, and you like the Overload shenanigans, she's probably pretty good in it. Like, legit. That's about average for one single newbie con. Yeah, pretty much. Okay, so we've now talked about the original 5. And I think it's easy to say that each one of them has their homes, their roles, and there's valid reasons for picking all of them. But if I had to do, like, an order here, if you're a new player, Diluc's the best. Like, Diluc is, like, absolutely the best. If you're still new and you don't have anything else, and you know about the Dendro reactions and stuff, Kaching is a good pickup as well. Probably about as good. Almost about as good. If you already have, like, a Diluc, a Kaching, or another DPS, like Jean or Chi-Chi, great pickups. These are fantastic. And then, if you don't, you know, barring all that, you're in the mid-game, you have a couple of characters, Monene, fantastic pickup. But then, they added 2 new ones. That's right, there's 2 more characters to talk about. And it's, of course, Tighnari, and the best character in the game. So we're, of course, going to start with Tighnari. We're going to save the best for last. So Tighnari came along with the advent of Dendro. And as a first character, if you were looking for, like, a great character to start with, he's right there with Diluc. He is easily right there with Diluc. He's fairly easy to play. He introduces you to the mechanics of charge shot characters. He can teach you how to do bow stuff. Because he's really easy to work with, and he basically does, like, the charge shot bow stuff, and it feels pretty good. And this is kind of his thing, right? Unlike other bow characters, he has a charge level 2. He can double charge his bow for bonus effects, bonus damage, and cool stuff. And his ratios are solid. He can hit really hard. His skill does a good chunk of damage, and it's like a blind. It's like a taunt blind of sorts. Well, yeah, it's interesting. It's a taunt. Similar to, like, Mona's. But it lasts 8 seconds. And actually has a proper duration, because he's a newer character. I've heard Nari and Yai is good. Yes. Tighnari plus an Electro character is good. It doesn't even have to be Yai Miko. But if you want to go with the... if you really like your furry ears, then yeah, knock yourself out. Yeah, your next 3 charge shots are at basically instant speed. They come out very fast, and they scale very hard, they do a lot of damage, and it shoots off multiple Dendro attacks, and it's just solid. So, he has a very cohesive kit right off the bat, and then his burst doesn't really interact with that charge shot playstyle. You just throw damage out, though. It's very, like, by the numbers, push button, do damage. It's not fancy, it's just good, and it's cheap. So you can get this out frequently. You can make, like, Fischl fits that same boat in a similar vein. Beidou, I think, works with him, weirdly enough. I'll have to check the wording on something, but I'm pretty sure Beidou works with him, too. So most of the off-field Electro characters are fine, but like Yai Miko and Fischl are like the poster children. Now this is cool, though. This is the thing that makes Nari really good. Like, Nari, if you just had this stuff, Nari's already good. He's Dendro, which is one of the best elements in the game for reactions. You combine it with Hydro for bloom stuff, you combine it with Electro for spread stuff, and then you got the Burgeon and Hyper Blooms, and it's nuts. It's crazy. Super good. Official and Beto require normal attack. False, actually. Official only requires normal attacks if you have her C6. And Beto... I'm gonna check Beto, because Beto has weird wording. Normal and charged attacks. False on both counts, Sean. No one knows what Beto does. Thank you, Sean, for proving the point I've been saving for a long time. No one knows what Beto does. No one does what Beto knows. No one knows. And now everyone in the chat, I'm hoping, is looking at that saying, whenever they do normal and charged attack, they're like, wait, hold on, it works with charged attacks? What? What? Yeah. Yeah, she works with Dari. Uh-huh. I see to the point. I will see 2 points. It's so funny, though. No one knows what Beto does, because no one uses her. Missed opportunity. You're just that moment of, oh shit. And then, yeah, with the official example, if you have C6, yes, that is true. If you don't have C6, though, and you're just running official, like, you know, raw, like, just by yourself, then, yeah, no, it works just fine. I mean, at that point, I'm pretty sure, I think Yai would be better still, but Yai's a 5-star, official's a 4-star, easier accessibility. As I use Beto in one of my main teams, Spread Nahida, that is actually one of the main reasons I use her. Nice! Finally, someone who understands. Anyway, back on task. So yeah, even without, like, this, like, cool talent, these are already good, but what this effectively does is it lets you do EM stacking on him and still buff his attack scaling attack. Like, you want a little bit of both. Like, you want some attack, you want EM, you want both, because they work well with one another. Or, sorry, rather, I'm sorry, Elemental Mastery, it's this one that does that. My bad, my apologies, I got it mixed up. My bad. Hey, Kinkle, what's up, man? Welcome to the stream. So this is the one that gives you bonus damage on all of his, basically all of his stuff, based on his EM, and then he just gets bonus EM from doing charge shots. But yeah, so he is a EM scaling, attack scaling, he's a hybrid character of sorts. But since Dendro loves EM, they scale with EM incredibly well. Out of all of the 5-star characters, this is like the most cohesive kit in the entire game for all the standard characters. Like, this is a very tight-knit kit. So if this is... He's actually really good for learning, too. He teaches you how to use bows. He's really good to, like, learn how to do bow stuff. He's really good at learning how these synergies work and, like, how a kit comes together. And he's really just strong, right? Like, Dendro is meta, and he fits into that meta very nicely. Does a little bit better for him. For Constellation, since he's newer, I don't think a lot of people are going to have, like, his C6 and stuff. So his Constellation conversation is going to be pretty big. This is going to be a very important conversation for a lot of people, possibly. So this is just nice. This is not like a Constellation that I'm like, oh, you have C0 Tainari, you need to get C1. Nah, it makes building him a little easier because you don't need as much crit rate. So it's nice, but it's not, like, game-changing. It's good, though. While there are opponents within his skill, I believe that's the skill, yeah. So while enemies are, like, being taunted and shit, he gets 20% Dendro damage bonus. The effect will last up to 6 seconds if the field's duration ends, or no longer has opponents in it. This is nice. This also kind of fits into this. If you have C2, this allows you to sort of do I've come to calling it the Shogun thing, where you don't run an Elemental Goblet and you run an Attack Goblet instead. So you can run an EM Sans Attack Goblet or Attack Sans EM Goblet if you want, instead of Dendro, because his level up stat is also Dendro damage. So you can sort of go without it. It gives you options. This gives you this Constellation gives you better build options. C4, when his Fashioner's Tanglevine Shaft is unleashed, all nearby party members get 60 EM, which is very good. A free EM buff for your whole party is really nice. No one complains about this. And if you trigger any, I believe that's any Dendro reaction, so Burning, Bloom, Quicken, Spread. So anything other than the Hyper, like the Bloom follow-up reactions, which makes sense because Dendro can't trigger those anyway, you will get another 60 EM. So it is effectively a free... It is a free 120 EM that you can keep up most of the time. So it's an 8-second duration. Technically 16 seconds if you optimize it. But then you're not getting the whole full 120. But let's like round it. Let's like average it. Let's say we're doing like 10 seconds. 10 to 12 seconds. So you can have almost perfect uptime on that. That's really good. That's good. Free EM is really good. Everyone likes free EM. Diona gives free EM. It's good there. It's good here. And he gets like, he eats it. He eats up that EM. He loves it. And then finally, Wreath Arrow charge shot time is decreased by 0.9 seconds, which is just nice. Produces an additional damaging arrow. And this arrow will deal 150% of his attack as damage. This is good. This kind of makes it that you can just fire off charge shots whenever you want. Like, you're not as beholden to the skill. You'd still rather use it with the skill, but without the skill, you can still fire off some, and it feels pretty good. So, I would say, like, if you're going for any constellation here, the really big one is C6. Like, C6 pretty exciting. And C4 is pretty exciting. C3, actually, you know what? All of his constellations, like, barring C1, is pretty cool. Like, all these are interesting. I'm pretty cool. I'd feel pretty good with any of these. But yeah, for teams, though, like, he really likes, like, Dendro-Electro combination, because he wants to be doing, like, the aggravate stuff. He likes doing spread and aggravate. Like, the Quicken, I think it's called. I think Quicken is the base one. Quicken, Catalyze, whatever you want to call it. He likes all of that stuff. You can do other stuff with him. You can do Burning. You can put him in a Burning team. You can put him in a, because Burning is kind of, like, very quick swappy at times. You can put him in a Bloom team, and he's not complaining about it. But, like, bread and butter for him is definitely Electro. You put him with a couple of Electro characters, another Dendro character, and you're having a wonderful time. And like I said, he kind of fits that same spot as Diluc, where he's a great first grab. Because he's easy enough to work with, and he teaches a lot about how to do the stuff in the game because of how reaction-oriented Dendro is. Good learning tool. If you're an old player, it might be him too. If you don't have him already, or like you have like a couple of constellations or you want more, like he's worthwhile. And for like mid-game, he's still good. He's good at like every stage in the game. He's always going to be good, I think. Because he's Dendro, he's always going to have a home. So he's really good. Final one. The one we've all been waiting for. So this is the one I'm going for. Most likely. Dia is one of my favorite characters. She's often slept on by a lot of players. People think she's like the worst character in the game. Let me tell you why you're wrong. But yeah, Dia is not a normal attacker. She has some of the coolest normal attacks in the game. They're not great. They're not what you're using her for. You can pair her with a C6 Bennett and have her, you know, be on field, but like only I'm stupid enough to do that. Her skill is really good. Straight up, her skill is super duper good. It is a off-field pyro application. It does damage on entry, and like, you know, you can activate it twice for a replacement of it, which is good. It scales with HP and attack. Mostly attack out of the gate, but like it gets some good HP scaling eventually. We'll talk about it. It has a bunch of... Here's the thing. This is where like she is not good for the new character. If you're a new player, don't pick Dia. As much as I love Dia, I cannot recommend her to a new player. She has a lot of nuance. Dia is such an underrated... She's very versatile. But I will say for a new player, she is a lot of moving parts, and she needs a lot of investment to really get there. So if you're brand new to the game, she is a gorgeous character. She looks cool as hell, but you might have a rough time making her pop off. Because a whole part of her kit, especially in her skill, like this is what the skill does, it absorbs damage. It is a damage mitigation. It starts at 32%. It goes all the way up to 50 at level 10. So basically reducing damage by half as long as you're in the circle. It's a big circle. It's very forgiving. Tia's a must for exploring Dragonspine. She's literally immune to Dragonspine. If you're a new player and you're struggling in Dragonspine specifically, she is immune to Dragonspine. I'll be real with you. She's literally immune to Dragonspine, so keep that in mind. So that is a legitimate use case for her. As for team, but like we'll get into the teams and stuff, there's still like talents to live over. But her whole thing is this skill providing damage mitigation for your team, and she absorbs that damage. She takes it for you. Which is why stacking health on her is really good, because she's just gonna eat up the damage like nobody's business. And it also increases her damage. We got Leon and Bite, again another hybrid scaling ability, scales with both attack and HP. The HP scaling is pretty good. Out of the gate, the attack scaling is a little bit better. But it lasts for 4 seconds. The whole thing with it is that you can mash the attack button, or the skill button, if you want. I usually prefer the attack button, it's more natural. You punch faster. And you do a bunch of damage. Worth noting, you pick up her little totem thing that she places from her skill when you burst, and you'll replace it down wherever you finish your burst at. Another thing worth noting, a lot of people get uppity about this, I'm going to mention it, you can jump to cancel it. Some people don't like that. I like that. I think the fact that you can jump cancel it is actually really important and really good. Because, here's a question to you. Why are you jumping during her burst? Why are you doing that? Get your finger off the jump button. It shouldn't be there. Stop touching the jump button, okay? That's my PSA. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Stop trying to jump with your Dia. Anyway, this does pretty big damage potentially. You can really build into this, and it can do a lot of damage. You don't have to build into it. I kind of do. I build into her damage a little bit, but like I'm more using her for her tanking abilities. She's super bulky. She absorbs so much damage for your team that like you don't have to worry about being killed a lot of the time. As long as your skill's up, you're safe. It's almost as good as having a Zhongli shield. Like, why is this jump canceling thing people like so upset about? It's just like I don't understand why they can't. Like, do you push? A question: when you're bursting with like your Diluc or you're like any other character in the game, are you like salivating looking at your jump button? Do you stare at your jump button and go, "I have to press it"? Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? I don't get it. Dia can't. If your Dia is killed, it was your fault. I'm sorry. I've had a few instances of, like, if I get killed with my Dia, I'm like, what the hell did I do wrong? Holy shit. I really screwed the pooch on that one. God damn. Dia can die from damage. Yes. Anyway, so yeah, Dia's whole thing is she's indestructible. Is she good for a new player? Not really. Is she good for like a long-time player who needs more options? Absolutely. She is fantastic, has a lot of options. She's good in Burgeon. She can be good in Vape. She can be good in Burning. She's really good with Burning. Like, straight up. Put her with, like, Emily or any of the, like, Air Fryer comms. She's really good in it. Unironically, she's super good in those builds. She's super strong in them and just gets the job done. And you can build her for straight damage. You can build her for, like, supporty stuff, like just stack health and EM on her. Or you can be, like, do what I do and do, like, hybrid attack and health, focusing on health. But we'll talk more about that in C1. So C1's interesting. C1 increases her health scaling. And just gives her more health. This is good. Like, this is really good. This is the thing that makes you so you can just stack health on her. If you want to run her as a straight health scaler, her C1 enables that. Like, before her health scaling is fine. This makes it good. So, if you have Dia and you're a Dia enthusiast, this is kind of a must-have. I'll be straight up with you. This changes how you can play her and makes her really... This is where a lot of her damage can come from, in my opinion. From my experience, and I have a lot of it when it comes to Dia, this is a really good constellation. The C2, on the other hand, this is also really good, but it's not as, like, game-changing as this one. This one just gives you the uptime that you really want with her skill. Anyway, this is a really good one. I don't think it's as exciting as, say, like the first one, but this is really nice. It makes playing her really smooth, and it does increase the damage of it, which is good. Like, you know, gives you, like, a burst of extra damage. This is a solid one. I don't think it's as, like, a priority as, like, some of the other ones, but it is good. C4. I wish I had C4. When Flamane's Fist and Incineration Drive, sorry, which I believe is the all the elements of the burst. It's the punches and the kick at the end. Hit an opponent, you restore energy, which is really good. This is really good. This makes it so you have you don't need batteries as much for her. She has energy problems. She needs help with her energy a lot of the time. This alleviates that significantly. Definitely. Poor Venti, indeed. So, getting this can change a lot of this, and it also gives her, like, a heal, which is kind of redundant, but it's there. If you didn't think she was indestructible before, now she's even more indestructible, like, seriously. The energy is what you're using this for, that's the exciting part. You want the energy generation. The health is just kind of like, oh, that's neat. Like, this is a good one to pick up. If you're a really big Dia enthusiast like myself, this is worth grabbing. C3 also worth doing it too, because, like, you know, obviously big damage. These ones are actually pretty nice. They're noticeable. Now, this is cash money. If you have C5 Dia and you're, like, on the border of C6, get the C6. If you're a Dia enthusiast, this thing's sick. This is sick nasty. Crit rate of her burst increased by 10%. Just nice. It's just clean. And after Flame Main Fist hits an enemy, deals critical hits during a single Blazing Lane estate, it will cause the crit damage of the burst to increase by 15% for the rest of the duration. And it extends the duration by half a second. It can trigger every 0.2 seconds, and a maximum of 60 crit damage and 2 seconds of duration. Basically what this is saying is, your burst is going to hit like a dump truck, and is going to hit for a dump truck longer. I want this constellation pretty much more than any other one right now, I think. But yeah, if you're a Dia enthusiast like myself, like, any of these are good, but, like, 1 and 6 are the cash money ones. These are like the, whoo, oh, these are good. These are the ones you're after. The other ones are mostly for utility. Like, this is a great utility one. This is a great utility one. Like, or sorry, this one, sorry. So, 2 and 4 are utility, 1 and 6 are damage. These are the exciting ones. These are the utility ones, but otherwise they're all good. But yeah, for a new player, probably stay away from Dia. I hate saying that. As a Dia, like, take this from someone who is a Dia stan, and I adore Dia and, like, think Dia is grossly underrated. She is not a great character to start the game with. If you're brand new, she's not, like... Yeah, no one's focused, so I gotta, like, keep myself on track. She's not the best for new players because she requires a lot of investment, she takes time, and she's built to, like, prop up other characters and protect them rather than dealing her own damage. But she lands in that very same category that I put Chi-Chi and Jean in. She's a great second character. She is a phenomenal second character, especially depending on who you're working with, especially. But, like, she's a tank. She keeps your team alive. She doesn't heal, other than herself, of course. But that second character slot, she makes a great argument for it. She's really strong in that role. And in the end game, especially, God, the survivability she brings is unparalleled. Like, she's wildly strong when it comes to survivability. But yeah, that's the long and short for her. She's super good, just not in the early game. She needs time. We kind of, like, got, like, we've given reasons for, like, every single character. But for new players, Diluc and Tainari are probably the best, with a Keqing being, like, a distant third, but, like, she's good in that conversation. For, like, mid-game players and players who are, like, fairly, like, that, like, have a couple of characters or, like, 1 or 2 good characters that they're already rolling with, Mona is a really good pick, and same with Dia. And then for, like, a secondary character, like, for your first healer, supporty character, Dia, Chi-Chi, Jean, those are, like, probably your best options, I would say. It's all my opinion, and somewhat my chat's opinion, and, yeah. So, as always, thank you so much for watching this YouTube video. The stream will keep going, of course, don't worry, guys, don't go anywhere. So, as always, cheers, take care. Alright. Do you stare at your jump button and go, I have to press it? Like, what are you doing?